let's shift. There's a couple of things. I mean, you've been covering the DCCC a lot recently and sort of intervening in primaries. There's also a piece in The Intercept that Zad Jilani wrote, and you did a really good sort of breakdown and elaboration of for TYT. You're also a reporter for on this Stan Greenberg or Greenberg-Quinlan-Rosner research on healthcare that was delivered to the Democrats in Congress. Can you explain what the controversy around that survey question and the analysis that's based off of it is that was delivered to the Democrats?
So they came out of the election and asking the question, how should we be messaging? How should candidates and members of Congress who are running for re-election be messaging health care? And so they asked these two consulting firms to take a look at it, and Stan Greenberg presented the findings to whoever wanted to show up. So about 50 or 60 Democrats showed up to hear the briefing. And the upshot was you should not talk about single payer. You shouldn't really talk about anything other than what's wrong with the Republican plan. But if you get asked, you should say, we're going to lower healthcare costs by, putting more tax credits into the, marketplace, and we're going to allow Medicare to negotiate for lower drug prices. That's what they found. But yeah, if you look at the actual question, and we got a hold of the survey that they ran, the question said, what is one way that you would like your healthcare improved? And it, in the survey they underlined you and your to make it clear, like we're asking you about your plan. And so 12% of people said that they wanted single payer, which if you think about it, makes no sense.
It's a non sequitur for the question that was asked.
Right.
Right.
Which the only way it makes sense is if you assume that there are about 12% of the public out there that really, really is passionate about single payer, and will answer that no matter what the healthcare question is, even if it makes no sense. But the plurality, the overwhelming plurality of 40-some%, said exactly what you would think that they would say. I want my healthcare to be cheaper, my health insurance to be cheaper. A couple people said they wanted it to be, 5% or whatever said they wanted it to be less complicated, which actually would fit with the single payer crowd. 1% said they wanted to get rid of the individual mandate, which also makes very little sense as an answer to that question. So it just suggests that somebody really doesn't like the individual mandate there. But yeah, so they use these answers to say, look, see, only 12% of people want single payer, so this is bad. So don't say you want single payer, and then they handed out, a couple pages of attacks that have been made on single payer. If you say you like single payer, here are the things that people are going to say about it. And I think in the future, what one of these memos is going to have is, here are the negative things that people say about single payer. Here are the responses that you can have.
This had no responses.
Right.
And some of the sources of the attacks were places like the Heritage Foundation. So they literally were, printouts from right-wing PR shops, essentially, with no responses. So it actually digested right-wing talking points into the Democratic memo.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. And that's where we are now with the relationship of the kind of Washington party establishment to single payer. But I think it's moving fairly quickly. And this was a year ago. This was April 2017, and it just now was leaked. And you're seeing some other leaks around these kinds of issues. You had a leak of a memo that the D-Trip sent out suggesting that people not politicize shootings and just offer thoughts/prayers. Not even thoughts and prayers, just thoughts/prayers, which is kind of the laziest way to
if you double up, it's
thought.
a little excessive, right?
Yeah, I guess one or the other. Offer one or the other. Don't go crazy.
Yeah, it just starts to look exploitative, I think, at a certain point. But but can we just talk for a second about Stan Greenberg and Greenberg-Quinlan as a firm? it's interesting. I mean, this is an older one. I mean, this one goes back to the Clinton era. But
Hmm.
what's odd about it, what caught me is I mean, on one hand, this firm very much fits the model of a Democratic Party that is, first of all, obviously was built out of the Clinton era and all of the sort of, I felt in some ways Greenberg was a bit more on the sort of economically quasi-populist and more sort of
Hmm.
socially reactionary end of Clintonism, which is how he ran his first campaign more so, unless
Right.
the kind of more just sort of overtly pro-corporate tech bubble of the more of the sort of second half
Right.
of Bill Clinton. And so, that there's that paradox, and then also, yes, Stan Greenberg's firm certainly has plenty Fortune 500 company clients, and they've done a lot of work for, the insurance industry and arms manufacturers and all sorts of, companies and interests that are, antithetical to a more genuinely progressive agenda. That being said, just to kind of tie a bow on it, I mean, Stan Greenberg is somebody who actually came out, very early after Hillary Clinton lost and was like, look, we needed to have at least a somewhat affirmatively economically, a
Hmm.
populist message. He's actually made the argument, I think, fairly effectively that there's no contradiction between being a party of multiculturalism and a rising America and being one that addresses inequality and runaway corporate power. So it was kind of weird to see. I mean, there's a lot
Well,
of
and so you make a good
contradictions in
point,
him and
and
that firm. Yeah,
and
sorry.
here
Go
here's
ahead.
one detail
Yeah,
that goes to your point.
yeah.
While he presented the findings, because he's the guy that they've all known, because like you said, Clinton administration, married to a member of Congress, so they feel comfortable with him presenting it. He told us that Alan Quinlan actually did the research, so
Hmm.
it was more like, hey, Stan, can you head over to the DNC, at 3 this afternoon with this PowerPoint? Um, that it seemed like that was more his involvement with the project, where it was Quinlan, and he was quite upfront about that when we reached out. He said, "Hey, my colleague did it, and here you should talk to my colleague." And his colleague never ended up commenting for our story.
And is the implication that Quinlan maybe is more the guy on the side of the sort of corporate side of the shop? I mean, is that what he's implying
You could
there?
certainly draw that from it, or that Stan doesn't want to be associated with it because he sees the direction it's going to. And like you said, he always has been more on the economic populist side. Um, despite everything else that you said.
What would you take from this polling though? Because you've also mentioned that. I mean, first of all, okay, 12% of people are absolutely committed to
They're
Medicare
all
for
in.
all, even to the point. And Frank, I mean, I guess if I'm being honest, that's how I'd answer the question. So I'm of those
Maybe, right.
12%. I get it. And then when you go over some of the other numbers, and you actually make the point that they could quickly be leveraged into single payer proponents. Can you break that down?
Right, except for the people who rabidly ideologically oppose the idea of single payer. If you looked at those categories, so you had a bunch of people who said they wanted drug costs to be lower. Okay, well, Bernie's plan, you get free drugs.
Mm-hmm.
They all said they wanted to. There's lots of people said they wanted premiums lower. Okay, well, under Bernie's plan, the premiums are zero. They all said they wanted deductibles to be lower. Okay, well, there are plans under which the deductible would be zero. And so, if you you had that 5% that wanted less complexity, they wanted their insurance not to be such a pain in the ass to try to understand. You add that together, you're into the 60s.
Yep.
Pretty quickly. And if you even want to pick up that 1 point from the person that didn't like the individual mandate, there's no individual mandate with single payer either, because you don't have to do anything. You're just covered. So right. So you could have had somebody put together talking points that said, look, if you want to back single payer, here's how you talk about it. It will lower your drug costs. It will lower your premiums. It'll lower your out-of-pocket, fees for deductibles, etc. But you're going to have, and you have in countries like, there are people in the UK who just ideologically don't like National Health Service. I don't like the idea of it. You're gonna have those people. So there's some of those embedded in that 60+%, but it's certainly even on its own terms is not dispositive when it comes to single payer.